Vincent Caldero never made promises he couldn't keep, and he never promised love. The most feared man in the city built his empire on control, distance, and absolute power. Then he met Lena Moore, a waitress who looked him in the eye without fear and spoke truths no one else dared. He offered her a job with one iron rule: no emotions, no attachments, no love. She accepted, thinking she could survive his world without losing herself. She was wrong. What began as a transaction became the one thing that could destroy them both, or save what was left of his humanity. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far Lena and Vincent's journey has traveled across the world. Chelsea. The cafe was dying. Not dramatically, not with fire or fury, but with the slow, inevitable decline of a place the world had simply stopped noticing. The Morningside Cafe had once been charming: exposed brick, mismatched chairs, the kind of atmosphere that whispered authenticity. Now it just whispered desperation. The brick was chipped, the chairs wobbled, and the coffee machine sputtered like it had emphysema. Lena Moore wiped down the same table for the third time that hour, her movements automatic, her mind elsewhere. 26 years old and invisible. That's what she'd become in this city. Not ugly, not beautiful, just unremarkable enough to blend into the background of other people's lives. Brown hair pulled into a practical ponytail, gray eyes that had learned not to expect much, a slender frame hidden under a black apron stained with years of other people's orders. The lunch rush, such as it was, had ended an hour ago. Now only 3 customers remained: an elderly man doing a crossword puzzle he'd been working on for 2 weeks, a college student whose laptop had become a permanent fixture at table 7, and the new guy. Lena had noticed him the moment he walked in, because everyone noticed him. It wasn't his clothes, though the charcoal suit probably cost more than her annual rent. It wasn't his looks, though he wore his features with the kind of sharp elegance that seemed carved rather than born. It was the way the air changed when he entered, became heavier, more deliberate, like the room itself was holding its breath. He sat at the corner booth, the one with the broken vinyl seat that she'd meant to warn him about. He didn't seem to notice or care. He simply sat with his back to the wall, his eyes scanning the cafe with the methodical assessment of someone who cataloged exits as naturally as other people counted sheep. Lena approached with her order pad, her smile automatic and empty. "What can I get you?" He looked up, and for the first time in months, someone actually saw her. Not through her, not past her, at her. His eyes were dark, almost black, and they examined her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. Coffee, black, no sugar, no cream, nothing that pretends to improve it. His voice matched everything else about him: controlled, precise, expensive. "Most people like a little sweetness in their coffee," Lena said, the words escaping before her usual filter caught them. One corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "Most people lie about what they actually want." She should have nodded, walked away, brought him his damn coffee. Instead, she heard herself say, "And you don't?" I stopped lying when I realized honesty was more efficient. He closed the menu he hadn't been reading. "Do you lie, Miss Moore, Lena Moore? And no, I don't have the energy for it." This time, the almost smile became real, transforming his face from striking to devastating. "Then we'll get along fine. Bring me that coffee, Lena Moore, and make it the way you would drink it, not the way you think I want it." She should have argued, should have followed his original order exactly. Instead, she found herself behind the counter preparing coffee the way she actually liked it. Strong, but with a hint of cinnamon and exactly 1 sugar cube dissolved until you couldn't taste sweetness directly, only the absence of bitterness. When she set the cup in front of him, he studied it like it contained secrets. "This isn't black." "No," she agreed. "It's honest." He lifted the cup, took a slow sip, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You didn't follow instructions." "You told me to make it the way I would drink it. I did." Most people would have assumed I wanted what I ordered, despite what I said. Most people aren't paying attention to what you actually mean." Lena picked up the menu he'd abandoned. "Are you eating or just testing the waitress?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, Vincent Caldero. He extended his hand. Lena shook it, noting the calluses that didn't match the expensive suit. The strength in his grip that suggested violence lived comfortably in those fingers. "Should I know that name?" she asked, though something in her gut already did. "If you don't, you're the only person in this city who doesn't." He released her hand but continued watching her face. "And that makes you either very sheltered or very smart. Or very busy trying to pay rent," Lena said. "The blueberry muffins are fresh, the sandwich board lies, everything else is from yesterday." Vincent Caldero leaned back in the broken booth, and this time his smile was genuine. "Bring me a muffin and another coffee, exactly like this one." "And Lena Moore?" "Yes?" "Don't ever start lying. It doesn't suit you." She walked away feeling like she'd just passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. For the next 2 weeks, Vincent Caldero came to the Morningside Cafe every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon. He always sat in the same broken booth, always ordered coffee the way Lena made it that first day, and always stayed for precisely 47 minutes. Lena knew because she'd started timing it, not out of interest but out of self-preservation. Everything about Vincent Caldero suggested danger, the kind that wore expensive cologne and made excellent small talk while calculating exactly how to dismantle your life. She'd looked him up after that first visit. 3 minutes on her phone had told her everything she needed to know and nothing she wanted to face. Vincent Caldero wasn't just powerful. He was power itself. Real estate empire, import-export businesses that probably imported and exported things that would never appear on customs forms, political connections that went up so high they disappeared into clouds of plausible deniability. And the other things, the whispered things, the kind of accusations that never quite made it to court, the kind of influence that made prosecutors reconsider their career choices, the kind of reputation that cleared rooms and ended conversations. She should have refused to serve him, should have quit, should have done anything except continue bringing him coffee and engaging in conversations that felt like dancing on the edge of something vast and dark. "You're afraid of me now," he said on the 3rd week, his voice conversational as she set down his cup. Lena's hand didn't shake. She'd learned young that showing fear only encouraged predators. "Should I be?" "That's not an answer." "Neither is your question." She met his eyes. "You asked if I'm afraid. You didn't ask if I should be. Those are different things." Vincent studied her with that unnerving intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. "You looked me up." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Would you respect me if I hadn't?" "No," he admitted. "I'd think you were stupid, and that would be disappointing." "And now that I know who you are?" "Now you're still bringing me coffee and still talking to me like I'm human." He lifted his cup in a small salute. "Either you're brave, reckless, or you've decided the risk is worth the tips." Lena laughed, surprising herself. "You tip exactly 15%. It's hardly worth dying over. 15% is the appropriate gratuity for standard service. I make you special coffee with cinnamon you claim to hate, but finish every time. That deserves acknowledgement, not exploitation." But he pulled out his wallet, extracted a $100 bill, and set it on the table. "Better?" Lena stared at the money, then at him. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because it feels like a transaction I didn't agree to." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or something darker. "Everything is a transaction, Lena. The only question is whether both parties understand the terms." "What are your terms?" "I haven't decided yet." He stood buttoning his suit jacket with practiced precision. "But when I do, you'll be the first to know." He left without the $100 bill. Lena stared at it for a long moment before pocketing it and trying not to think about what she'd just agreed to. The offer came on a Tuesday in late October, delivered not by Vincent himself, but by a woman who looked like she could kill you with her car keys and make it look accidental. "Lena Moore?" The woman's voice was crisp, professional, and completely devoid of warmth. She wore a black pantsuit that screamed corporate assassin and heels that could double as weapons. "That's me," Lena said, balancing 3 plates and a coffee pot. "Mr. Caldero requests your presence at this address tonight at 8 o'clock. A car will collect you at 7:45 from your apartment. She placed a card on the counter with the efficiency of someone dealing a killing blow in poker. I don't remember agreeing to any. He anticipated your concern. He asked me to tell you that this is a professional proposition, not a personal one, and that you're free to decline. The woman's expression suggested that declining would be a mistake Lena would regret. He also said to remind you that he appreciates honesty and punctuality. Then she was gone, leaving Lena holding a business card with an address in the kind of neighborhood where buildings didn't have numbers, just names and reputations. She should have thrown the card away. Should have changed her number, found a new job, maybe left the city entirely. Instead, she found herself standing in front of her closet at 7:15, trying to decide what one wore to a mysterious professional proposition with a man who probably had people killed between appetizers and dessert. The car arrived exactly at 7:45. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask for confirmation, just held the door open like her attendance had never been in question. The address belonged to a building that predated the automobile, a brownstone that radiated old money and older secrets. The door opened before she could knock, revealing not Vincent but an older man in a butler's uniform that looked more like armor. "Miss Moore, Mr. Caldero is expecting you in the library." Of course he had a library, probably filled with first editions bound in the skin of his enemies. But when she entered, she found not a villain's lair, but a room that felt almost human. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books that showed actual wear, leather chairs that had been sat in, a fireplace with real logs burning instead of gas pretension, and Vincent standing by the window with a drink in his hand, looking less like a crime lord and more like a man who carried too much weight and refused to set it down. "You came," he said, not turning around. "You didn't really give me a choice. I gave you a card and a time. You chose to be here." He turned then, and something in his expression was different, exposed, maybe, or just tired. "Thank you." Lena waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. Vincent set down his drink and faced her fully. "I have a proposition for you, Lena Moore. I want to hire you." "As a waitress?" "As my personal barista." She blinked. Of all the things she'd imagined, assistant, accountant, something criminal or sexual or dangerous, she hadn't expected this. "You want to pay me to make you coffee?" "I want to pay you to be honest," Vincent corrected. "The coffee is just the medium. I'm surrounded by people who tell me what they think I want to hear, who sculpt their words to match my expectations, who perform loyalty while calculating betrayal. You don't do that. You tell me the muffins are fresh and the sandwiches are lies. You charge me 15% when you could ask for more. You look at me like I'm just another customer who takes his coffee too seriously." "You do take your coffee too seriously." His smile was brief but genuine. "Exactly. I need someone in my life who will continue to tell me the truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's dangerous, even when I don't want to hear it." Lena's mind raced. "This is insane. You don't know me. I could be anyone. I've known you for 3 weeks. I know you work 60-hour weeks at a failing cafe to pay rent on a studio apartment in a building that should have been condemned 5 years ago. I know you put yourself through community college and stopped 2 classes short of an associate degree because your mother got sick. I know you read philosophy books on your breaks and you think Kant was full of shit, but Camus might have been onto something. I know you're kind to the elderly crossword man and harsh with the entitled laptop student because you respect effort and despise waste." Lena felt cold. "You investigated me." "I investigate everyone who interests me. You interest me, Lena Moore, because you're the first person in years who's treated me like a human being instead of an opportunity or a threat. Maybe that's because I didn't know who you were. You've known for 2 weeks. You're still here." Vincent moved closer, not threatening, but present. "I'm offering you a position with a salary of $150,000 a year, full benefits, and housing in one of my properties. Your job is simple. Make my coffee every morning, be available for conversation when I request it, and never, under any circumstances, lie to me." The number was absurd, life-changing, terrifying. "What's the catch?" Lena asked. Vincent's expression hardened, the momentary softness vanishing like it had never existed. "The catch is that this is purely professional. You will be in my home, in my life. in proximity to things most people never see. You will witness conversations, observe interactions, exist in spaces where loyalty is currency and betrayal is death. You will be safe, I guarantee that, but you will also be isolated. No relationships that I haven't approved, no friendships that might compromise your position, no romantic entanglements that could create leverage. You want to own me. I want to trust you, and trust requires control. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe. I'm not interested in you romantically or sexually. This isn't Pretty Woman, and I'm not looking for companionship beyond conversation. What I'm offering is a job, Lena, an unusual one, a demanding one, but a job nonetheless. And if I say no? Then you go back to the Morningside Cafe, and we both pretend this conversation never happened. I'll find my coffee elsewhere, and you'll continue being invisible. His eyes held hers. But we both know you're going to say yes. Why would you think that? Because you're drowning, and I'm offering you a lifeboat. Because you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity even when it comes wrapped in warning labels. Because despite everything you know about me, despite every instinct screaming that this is dangerous, there's a part of you that's curious about what it would be like to matter. Lena wanted to argue, to prove him wrong, to walk out with her dignity intact. But he was right. She was drowning, in debt, in invisibility, in the slow suffocation of a life that barely qualified as living. I have conditions, she heard herself say. Vincent's smile was sharp and satisfied. I expected nothing less. I want the agreement in writing. I want a termination clause that allows me to leave with severance if the situation becomes untenable. I want complete transparency about what you do, no plausible deniability, no protection through ignorance. If I'm going to be in your world, I need to see it clearly. Agreed, and absolutely not. Vincent moved to his desk, pulled out a folder that suggested he'd anticipated this conversation, and handed it to her. The contract includes everything you've asked for except complete transparency. Some things are need to know, Lena, and knowing them would make you complicit in ways that would destroy any chance of you leaving this life intact. So I'm supposed to trust you to decide what I can handle? Yes. His voice was flat, final. This is non-negotiable. You will know what affects your safety and your position. Everything else remains privileged. Lena opened the folder, scanning the dense legal language that probably contained a dozen ways to trap her. I need to think about this. No, you don't. If you needed to think about it, you wouldn't have come tonight. Vincent returned to the window, dismissing her or giving her space. She couldn't tell which. Take the contract, read it, sign it or don't. But make your decision in the next 24 hours because this offer expires at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Why the rush? Because hesitation breeds doubt and doubt breeds mistakes. I need someone decisive, Lena. Someone who can look at an impossible situation and choose action over paralysis. He glanced back at her. Are you that person or did I misjudge you? Pride and practicality warred in her chest. She looked at the contract, at Vincent, at the library that suggested depths she couldn't begin to fathom. I'll give you my answer tomorrow, she said. I'll be waiting. Yes, Lena didn't sleep that night. She read the contract 7 times, looking for the trap, the clause that would turn her into property, the legal language that would erase her autonomy. But it was exactly what Vincent had promised, a job offer with generous compensation, clear termination conditions, and binding confidentiality agreements that would bankrupt her if she ever spoke about what she witnessed. The money would change her life, would pay off her mother's medical bills, would give her breathing room to finish school, would provide the kind of security she'd only ever imagined. The cost was her freedom, not completely, but enough that she'd always be aware of the boundaries, the invisible fence that would surround her new existence. At 7:30 the next evening, she called the number on the business card. The same crisp female voice answered, Yes? Tell Mr. Caldero I accept his offer. I'll start Monday. Mr. Caldero anticipated your decision. A moving service will arrive at your apartment Saturday morning to handle your relocation. Please have your essential items packed. The line went dead before Lena could respond. She sat in her cramped studio apartment, surrounded by the evidence of a small life. Thrift store furniture, books from library sales, clothes that had seen better years. and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her death warrant. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Welcome to the organization. Don't make me regret this." VC Lena typed back, "Don't make me regret this." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, fair enough. The apartment Vincent provided wasn't an apartment, it was a statement. 2 floors of a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that had gentrified so aggressively it had forgotten its own history. Exposed brick and modern glass, a kitchen that probably cost more than her previous annual salary, a bedroom with a view of the city that made her feel like she was floating above her old life. A wardrobe had been provided. Professional clothes in her exact size, nothing ostentatious but everything quality. No sexy dresses or inappropriate suggestions, just the kind of clothing that announced competence and discretion. The coffee setup took up an entire corner of the kitchen. A commercial-grade espresso machine, a grinder that probably required a PhD to operate, beans from countries she'd never heard of, and a handwritten note in sharp, precise handwriting. "Your first job is to master this equipment. I expect excellent coffee by Monday." The instruction manuals are in the drawer. Don't disappoint me. VC Lena spent the weekend learning the machine, burning through 2 pounds of expensive beans, and trying not to think about what she'd agreed to. Monday morning, a car arrived at exactly 6:15. The same silent driver, the same sense of entering a world that operated by rules she didn't yet understand. Vincent's primary residence made her apartment look like a janitor's closet. The building occupied an entire city block, the kind of property that appeared on architectural tours and inspired envy in people who measured success in square footage. The butler, whose name was apparently James, delivered with a British accent that might have been real or might have been theater, led her through marble hallways to a private office that overlooked the city like a throne room. Vincent sat behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing strip, reviewing documents with the focus of a surgeon planning an incision. He didn't look up when she entered. "Coffee," he said. "The machine is in the adjacent room. You'll find everything you need." No greeting, no acknowledgement of the absurdity of the situation. Just an order delivered with absolute certainty of compliance. Lena could have argued, could have demanded basic courtesy. Instead, she went to make the coffee, recognizing the test for what it was. The adjacent room was less a kitchen and more a coffee laboratory. She took her time, preparing the espresso exactly as she'd learned over the weekend, adding the cinnamon and single sugar cube that he claimed to hate but always finished. When she set the cup on his desk, Vincent finally looked up. "You're 17 seconds late. You didn't specify a time frame." "I expected efficiency." "I prioritized quality over speed. If you want fast coffee, hire someone else." Lena met his stare without flinching. "If you want excellent coffee, give me the time to make it properly." For a long moment, Vincent said nothing. Then he lifted the cup, took a careful sip, and something in his expression softened. "Perfect," he said quietly. "You're going to fit in here just fine, Lena Moore." Is that a compliment or a threat? "It's an observation." He set down the cup and returned to his documents. "James will give you your schedule. I require coffee at 6:30 every morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 8 in the evening. Beyond that, you're available when I call for you and free when I don't. Questions?" "Hundreds." "Ask one." Lena considered carefully. "What happens if I screw up?" Vincent looked at her with eyes that had witnessed things she couldn't imagine. "Then we'll both find out if I made a mistake hiring you." It wasn't reassurance, but it was honest. "I can work with that," Lena said. "Good. You start now." The first month was an education in controlled chaos. Lena learned that Vincent ran his empire with the precision of a master clockmaker, every meeting timed to the minute, every interaction calibrated for maximum efficiency, every word chosen for impact rather than comfort. She learned that he slept 4 hours a night and considered rest a weakness, that he spoke 6 languages fluently and used them to conduct conversations he didn't want translated, that he could be charming when necessary and brutal when required, and the transition between the two was so seamless it felt choreographed. She learned that the people who orbited him operated in concentric circles of trust and terror. The inner circle who never smiled but always delivered, the middle tier who performed loyalty while plotting advancement, and the outer edge who existed only until they failed. And she learned that her position was unique, undefined, suspicious to everyone except Vincent himself.
"Why does he keep you around?" asked Marcus, Vincent's head of security, a man built like a concrete wall with the personality to match. They were in the kitchen at 2 in the afternoon while she prepared Vincent's second coffee of the day. "To make his coffee," Lena said simply. "Nobody pays that kind of salary for coffee." "Then maybe you should ask him, not me." Marcus leaned against the counter, his bulk making the industrial kitchen feel smaller. "I'm asking you, what's your angle?" "I don't have an angle. I make coffee, I talk when he wants conversation, and I collect a paycheck." Lena finished the espresso, added the cinnamon with practiced precision. "If that bothers you, take it up with your boss." "Everything bothers me. It's my job to be bothered." But Marcus stepped aside, letting her pass. "Just remember, you're here because he decided you should be. That can change in a heartbeat." "So can his coffee preference," Lena said. "We're all expendable, Marcus. At least I'm honest about it." She felt his eyes on her back as she left, calculating whether she was an asset or a liability. Vincent was on a call when she entered his office, his voice low and dangerous in Italian. She set the coffee on his desk and turned to leave. "Stay," he said in English, not looking at her. Lena froze. He continued the conversation in Italian, his tone shifting from dangerous to deadly. She didn't speak the language, but she understood music, and this was a symphony in threat and negotiation. When he finally ended the call, Vincent picked up his coffee and drank half of it in one long swallow. "Marcus questioned you," he said. "He's doing his job." "And what did you tell him?" "That I make your coffee and cash my paychecks." Lena stayed by the door, aware she was being tested again. "Was I supposed to say something else?" "No." Vincent finished the coffee, set down the cup with deliberate care. "You're learning the most important rule of this world, Lena. The less people know about why you matter, the safer you are." "Do I matter?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Vincent looked at her with an expression she couldn't decode. "You make exceptional coffee," he said finally. "Don't complicate it with expectations." It should have felt like a dismissal, but something in his voice suggested the complication had already begun. The complications began in small ways, like cracks in a dam that appeared harmless until the entire structure collapsed. 3 months into her employment, Lena had developed a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Morning coffee at 6:30 delivered to Vincent's bedroom suite, where he was always already awake, already dressed, already reviewing the day's agenda with the focus of a general planning a siege. Afternoon coffee at 2, brought to whatever location he'd designated, his office, the conference room, occasionally the roof terrace where he stood looking over the city like he was deciding which parts to keep and which to demolish. Evening coffee at 8, served in the library where he finally allowed himself to sit, to read, to exist as something other than a weapon wrapped in expensive tailoring. Between those fixed points, Lena lived in a strange suspension of luxury and isolation. Her apartment remained untouched, a gilded cage she'd decorated with books and silence. The other staff members treated her with polite confusion, unable to categorize her role in Vincent's hierarchy. She wasn't security, wasn't management, wasn't quite a servant, but definitely not an equal. She was simply there, a fixture that Vincent had installed and refused to explain. "You're the ghost girl," said Elena, one of the housekeepers, catching Lena in the hallway one afternoon. The woman was 50-ish, with knowing eyes and hands calloused from years of cleaning up other people's messes. "That's what they call you, La Fantasma." "I didn't realize I had a nickname," Lena said. "Everyone has a nickname in this house. Some are kinder than others." Elena glanced around, confirming they were alone. "Can I give you some advice, girl to girl?" "I have a feeling you're going to whether I want it or not." Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't get comfortable. Don't think you understand how this works. And whatever you do, don't make the mistake of believing you're special. I make his coffee. I'm aware that's not a unique skill. It's not about the coffee, and you know it." Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping. "I've worked for Mr. Caldero for 12 years. I've seen people come and go, some peacefully, some not. The ones who survive are the ones who remember their place and never forget that his kindness is a choice, not a guarantee.
Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Has he hurt people who worked for him? Mr. Caldero doesn't hurt his own people. He just stops protecting them, which in this world amounts to the same thing. Elena touched her arm, the gesture almost maternal. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Whatever arrangement you have with him, don't confuse it with friendship. He doesn't have friends. He has assets, and assets depreciate. Then she was gone, leaving Lena standing in a hallway that suddenly felt less like a luxury residence and more like a very expensive trap. That evening, when she brought Vincent his 8 o'clock coffee, she found him standing at the library window with his phone in his hand, staring at the screen like it contained a problem he couldn't solve through intimidation or money. Bad news? She asked, setting the cup on the side table. Vincent didn't turn around. My sister's getting married. Lena waited, sensing there was more. To an idiot, he continued. A well-meaning, earnest, completely unsuitable idiot who teaches high school English and thinks the world operates on good intentions and proper grammar. You don't approve. I don't approve of vulnerability. Marriage is a vulnerability. Love is a weapon that your enemies can use against you. He finally looked at her, his expression harder than usual. She knows this. I've explained it to her repeatedly. She's choosing it anyway. Maybe she thinks some things are worth the risk, Lena said carefully. Nothing is worth the risk of losing control. Vincent picked up his coffee, but didn't drink it. She wants me at the wedding, wants me to walk her down the aisle, give my blessing, pretend to be a normal brother, attending a normal family event. She doesn't understand that my presence puts a target on her back, that associating with me publicly turns her husband into leverage. Lena studied him, seeing past the cold logic to something that almost looked like pain. When's the wedding? 2 months. She's asked me 3 times already. I've said no 3 times. She's asked a 4th. He set down the coffee untouched, which was unusual enough to be alarming. Why do people insist on loving people? It's the most efficient way to destroy yourself. Because the alternative is existing without connection, and most people would rather risk pain than guarantee loneliness. The words came out before Lena could filter them. Too honest, too revealing. Vincent's eyes snapped to her face with laser focus. Is that what you think you're doing here? Connecting? No, Lena said, even though part of her wasn't sure anymore. I'm making your coffee and collecting a paycheck, remember? Good. Don't forget it. But something in his voice suggested he was reminding himself as much as her. She left the coffee untouched on the table, a small rebellion that felt larger than it should. The next morning, Vincent's mood had shifted from dark to glacial. He barely acknowledged her when she delivered his coffee, his attention fixed on a series of reports that seemed to be documenting someone's very bad day. Cancel my 2 o'clock, he said without looking up. Reschedule the evening meetings. Clear my calendar after 4. Should I ask why, or is that above my clearance level? I'm attending a wedding venue walkthrough with my sister. She's insisted, and apparently I've run out of excuses that don't make me sound like a sociopath. He signed something with aggressive precision. You're coming with me. Lena blinked. I'm sorry, what? You, coming with me. To meet my sister and pretend to be evidence that I'm capable of normal human relationships. Vincent finally looked at her, his expression challenging. Unless you'd prefer to stay here and alphabetize my coffee bean collection. I don't understand why you need me there. Because my sister will ask questions about my life, and I'd prefer to have answers that don't involve criminal enterprises or blood feuds. You're my barista. It's mundane. It's explainable. It's the kind of detail that makes me seem almost human. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Plus, she'll like you. You have that quality people find trustworthy. Gee, thanks for the ringing endorsement. I don't do endorsements. I do observations. Vincent moved toward the door, clearly expecting her to follow. Wear something nice but not expensive. My sister notices these things, and I don't need her thinking I'm dressing you like a mistress. I'm not your mistress, obviously. If you were, the coffee would be significantly less important. He glanced back at her. 4 o'clock, be ready. And Lena? Yes? Don't tell her anything real about what I do. She knows some of it, suspects more of it, and chooses to believe a version of me that's palatable. Let her keep that version. It was the closest thing to vulnerability she'd seen from him, and it made her chest ache in ways she didn't want to examine. The wedding venue was in the countryside, an hour's drive through landscapes that gradually shifted from urban decay to manicured prosperity. Vincent drove himself, which surprised her. She'd assumed he always had drivers, always maintained that layer of separation from mundane tasks. "You're wondering why I'm driving," he said, navigating the highway with the same precision he applied to everything else. "I was wondering if you even knew how to drive, or if you just intimidate cars into going where you want them to." His laugh was brief and genuine, transforming his face. "My father taught me to drive when I was 12. Said a man who couldn't control his own vehicle couldn't control anything else. He was wrong about most things, but he was right about that." It was the first time Vincent had mentioned his father voluntarily. Lena filed the information away, another piece of a puzzle she wasn't supposed to be assembling. "Tell me about your sister," she said. "Sophia is 32, teaches art history at a university, and believes that culture and education can redeem humanity's baser instincts. She's wrong, but she's sincere about it." Vincent's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "She's the only good thing our family ever produced, and I've spent her entire life trying to keep her separate from the parts of me that would contaminate her." "Does she know what you do?" "She knows enough to be careful and not enough to be complicit. It's the best I can offer her." He exited the highway onto a road lined with trees that hadn't existed when developers first carved up this land. "She's going to ask you questions. Answer honestly, but remember what honest means in context." "You want me to lie?" "I want you to be selective with your truth. There's a difference." Before Lena could argue, they arrived at the venue, a converted estate that managed to be elegant without being ostentatious, the kind of place that whispered taste rather than screaming money. Sophia Caldero was waiting on the front steps, and the family resemblance was immediate. Same dark eyes, same sharp features, but where Vincent wore his beauty like armor, Sophia's was softer, warmer, genuinely delighted. "Vinny!" she called out, using a nickname that seemed so incongruous with the man Lena knew that she had to suppress a laugh. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed fractionally. "Sophia." She threw her arms around him with the unself-conscious affection of someone who'd never learned to fear her brother. Vincent hugged her back with careful precision, like she was made of glass and he'd forgotten how not to break things. When Sophia pulled away, her attention immediately fixed on Lena with open curiosity. "And who's this? Please tell me you finally found someone who can tolerate your personality for more than 5 minutes." "This is Lena Moore, my barista," Vincent said, his voice carefully neutral. "Your barista." Sophia's eyes sparkled with mischief. "You brought your barista to my wedding venue walkthrough. That's either very strange or very interesting, and knowing you, probably both." Lena extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Sophia. Your brother speaks very highly of you." "My brother speaks very efficiently about everyone, which is different from highly." But Sophia shook her hand warmly. "Come on, both of you. The wedding planner is inside having a minor crisis about chair covers, which apparently is a real thing people care about." The next 2 hours were a masterclass in watching Vincent Caldero pretend to be a normal human being. He examined flower arrangements with feigned interest, offered opinions on table settings that suggested he'd actually been paying attention, and listened to his sister's excited planning with an expression that almost looked like affection. Lena found herself watching him more than the wedding preparations, fascinated by this version of Vincent that existed only in Sophia's presence, still controlled, still precise, but softer around the edges, like someone had sanded down the sharpest points of his personality. "He's different with you here," Sophia said quietly, when Vincent was distracted by the wedding planner's questions about security arrangements. They were standing on the terrace overlooking gardens that would be perfect in 2 months when spring actually arrived. "I don't think I have that much influence," Lena said. "You're here. That's influence." Sophia studied her with those same dark Caldero eyes, but where Vincent's were calculating, hers were simply observant. "Vinny doesn't bring people into his personal life. He barely has a personal life. The fact that you're standing here, that he trusted you enough to meet me, that means something." "It means he needed someone to make his presence here seem less threatening," Lena said. "I'm window dressing." "If you really believed that, you wouldn't have come." Sophia smiled. "My brother is very good at convincing people that his motivations are purely practical, but he's not as emotionless as he pretends.
He just thinks feelings are weaknesses, so he hides them under logic and control. You sound like you've been studying him for years. 26 years to be exact. I'm 6 years younger, which means I've had a lifetime of watching Vinny try to protect me from things he won't name and dangers he won't explain. Sophia's expression grew more serious. He told you about our father? Only that he taught him to drive. Our father taught him a lot of things, most of them destructive. He taught Vinny that love was leverage, that trust was stupidity, that the only way to survive was to control everything and feel nothing. Sophia's voice dropped.
It's taken me years to realize that everything Vinny does, the distance, the coldness, the absolute control, it's not because he doesn't feel. It's because he feels too much and has no idea how to handle it without it destroying him. Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Sophia touched her arm gently. Be patient with him, and be careful. Not because he'd ever hurt you intentionally, but because he has no framework for processing care that doesn't involve possession or protection. He's going to try to control you because it's the only way he knows how to keep people safe. Before Lena could respond, Vincent appeared at her elbow with his usual silent efficiency. We should leave. The drive back will take longer with evening traffic. Sophia hugged him again, fierce and quick. Thank you for coming, Vinny. It means everything to me. Don't thank me yet. Wait until after the wedding when I haven't caused an international incident.
But his hand rested briefly on her hair, a gesture so tender it seemed out of place on a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence. In the car heading back to the city, Vincent drove in silence for 20 minutes before speaking. My sister likes you. I like her too. She's nothing like you. That was the intention. I made sure of it. He navigated through traffic with aggressive precision. What did she tell you when I wasn't there? She said you're not as emotionless as you pretend to be. Vincent's jaw tightened. Sophia sees what she wants to see. It makes her life easier. Or maybe she sees what's actually there and you're the one pretending. Lena watched his profile, noting the tension in his shoulders. You care about her, it's obvious. Caring about someone and being capable of love are different things. Are they? Yes. His voice was flat, final. Caring is strategic. I care about Sophia because she's family, because protecting her serves a purpose, because maintaining that relationship provides stability. Love is... He paused, seeming to search for words. Love is chaos. It's unpredictable, uncontrollable, and inevitably disappointing. I don't have room for it in my life. Then why did you bring me today? Vincent was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. Because Sophia asked if I was lonely, and I wanted to have proof that I wasn't. Am I proof, or am I just a really well-paid prop? I haven't decided yet. He pulled into the underground garage of his building, killed the engine, but didn't move to exit the car. You're an anomaly, Lena. You don't fit into any category I've created. You're not staff. Not family, not a business associate, not a threat. You're just there, making coffee, asking uncomfortable questions, seeing things I don't show other people. Is that a problem? It's a complication. Vincent turned to look at her directly, and in the dim garage lighting, his expression was unguarded in a way that made her breath catch. I told you when I hired you, no emotions, no attachments, no love. I meant it. This is a professional arrangement, Lena, nothing more. Then why does it feel like you're trying to convince yourself more than me? The question hung between them, dangerous and honest. Vincent's eyes searched her face, and for a moment she thought he might actually answer, might crack open that carefully constructed armor and show her what lived underneath. Instead, he got out of the car without a word. Lena sat in the passenger seat for a full minute, trying to understand what had just happened and failing completely. The shift in their dynamic was subtle but undeniable. Over the following weeks, Vincent's requests for her presence increased, not just for coffee, but for conversation during his lunch breaks, for company in the library during late-night work sessions, for presence during phone calls he claimed were too boring to endure alone. You're spending more time with me than is necessary for your job description, Lena pointed out one evening when he'd summoned her to the library at 10:30, long past her scheduled 8 o'clock delivery.
Vincent looked up from the contract he'd been reviewing. Is that a complaint? It's an observation. Then observe silently while I finish this section. But there was no real bite in his voice, and when he finished reading, he set the papers aside and gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Tell me something. Something about what? Anything. Your day, your thoughts, your philosophy on why Kant was full of shit. I don't care. I just need to hear someone speak who isn't asking for permission, money, or forgiveness. Lena sat, tucking her legs under her in a way that would have been too casual if the moment had felt less honest. Kant wasn't entirely full of shit. He just made the mistake of thinking humans were capable of pure reason when really we're all just making emotional decisions and then justifying them with logic. That's cynical. That's realistic. You do it all the time. Vincent's eyebrow lifted. Explain. You claim every decision you make is strategic, but half of them are driven by loyalty to your sister, guilt about your father, or fear of becoming whatever it is you think you'll become if you let your guard down. Lena met his gaze steadily. You're not a logic machine, Vincent. You're a man who's terrified of his own emotions, so you pretend they don't exist. She expected anger, dismissal, maybe another reminder that she was overstepping her bounds. Instead, Vincent laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty and surprised. You're either very brave or very stupid, Lena Moore. Can't I be both? Most people who are both don't survive long in my world. He stood, moving to the bar cart and pouring 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. He handed her a glass and raised his own in a mock toast. To brave stupidity and stupid bravery, may they both get us killed in interesting ways. Lena accepted the glass but didn't drink. Are you drunk? I'd have to feel things to get drunk. This is just lubrication for a conversation I probably shouldn't have. Vincent sat on the edge of his desk, closer to her than was strictly professional. Do you want to know why I really hired you? I thought it was for my honest coffee-making abilities. That's what I told myself. The truth is messier. He swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the liquid catch the light. You looked at me in that failing cafe and saw a customer, not a king. You spoke to me like I was human, not a weapon or an opportunity. And for 5 minutes, I got to pretend that's what I actually was. Lena's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. Vincent, don't. He held up his hand. Don't say whatever sympathetic thing you're about to say. Don't tell me I'm better than I think, or that I deserve kindness, or any of the other comforting lies people tell damaged men to make themselves feel better. I'm exactly what I appear to be, someone who's very good at control and very bad at everything else. Then why am I here? Lena asked. If all you wanted was an illusion of humanity, you could have hired an actress. Why me specifically? Vincent drained his whiskey in one swallow, set down the glass with careful precision, and looked at her with eyes that held too much weight. Because you're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to be someone different, and I have no idea what to do with that. The confession hung between them like a live wire, dangerous and electric. Lena stood slowly, her own drink untouched, her heart hammering against her ribs. What do you want me to do with that information? She asked quietly. Nothing. Forget I said it. Pretend this conversation never happened. Vincent moved away from her, putting distance between them like it could somehow undo the vulnerability. Go back to your apartment, Lena. This was a mistake. Which part? Hiring me or being honest with me? Both, neither. I don't know anymore. He ran his hand through his hair, the first genuinely uncontrolled gesture she'd seen from him. You need to leave before I say something else I'll regret. Lena should have left, should have walked out, maintained the professional boundary, pretended his words hadn't just rearranged something fundamental in her understanding of who he was. Instead, she stepped closer. What if I don't want to leave? Vincent's eyes snapped to hers, dark and dangerous and desperate. Lena, don't. Don't what? Don't acknowledge that something shifted between us? Don't admit that I spend half my time thinking about conversations we haven't had yet? Don't tell you that you're not nearly as terrifying as you think you are? She was close enough now to see the war happening behind his carefully controlled expression. You told me not to lie to you, Vincent. I'm being honest. Honesty is going to ruin both of us.
Then maybe we deserve to be ruined. For one breathless moment, she thought he was going to close the distance between them, thought she was about to discover what it felt like when Vincent Caldero stopped being controlled and started being real. Instead, he stepped back, his expression shuddering like a door slamming shut. "Get out," he said, his voice cold enough to frost glass. "Get out of my office, go back to your apartment, and tomorrow morning pretend this conversation never happened. That's not a request, Lena. It's an order." The dismissal was brutal and absolute. Lena felt it like a physical blow, but she refused to let him see her flinch. "Understood," she said, her voice level despite the chaos in her chest. "I'll see you at 6:30 with your coffee, Mr. Caldero." She left the glass of whiskey on the table and walked out without looking back, feeling his eyes on her until the door closed between them. That night, alone in her expensive apartment, Lena made a decision. She could quit, walk away, return to her invisible life and pretend the past 4 months had been a strange dream. Or she could stay, accept the complication, and see where this dangerous thing between them actually led. By morning, she'd chosen. When she delivered Vincent's coffee at precisely 6:30, she found him already awake, already dressed, already armored in his expensive suit and colder than usual expression. "Your coffee, Mr. Caldero," she said, setting it on his desk with professional precision. He didn't look at her. "Thank you. That will be all." "Actually, I have something to say. I'm not interested in discussing last night." "Too bad. You're getting it anyway." Lena stayed where she was, refusing to be dismissed. "You said I make you want to be someone different. That terrifies you because you've built your entire identity on being exactly what you are, controlled, powerful, untouchable. The idea that I could shift that foundation scares you more than any enemy or rival ever could." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he still wouldn't look at her. "Your point?" "My point is that I'm not going anywhere. You can push me away. You can be cold. You can pretend last night didn't happen. But I'm still going to be here every morning at 6:30 with your coffee, still going to ask uncomfortable questions, still going to see through your armor to whatever you're hiding underneath. So you can either accept that and deal with it, or you can fire me and find someone else who makes adequate coffee and doesn't challenge you." Finally, Vincent looked up, and something in his expression was raw and unguarded. "I can't fire you." "Why not?" "Because you're right. You make me want to be different, and I don't know if that's salvation or destruction." His voice was quiet, almost broken. "But I can't seem to make you leave, no matter how hard I try." Lena felt something settle in her chest, certain and terrifying and real. "Then stop trying," she said. "Stop pushing me away and stop pretending you don't feel things. I'm not asking for love, Vincent. I'm just asking for honesty." "Honesty is dangerous. So is lying to yourself." Vincent stood slowly, moving around his desk until only inches separated them. He raised his hand like he might touch her face, then let it fall back to his side, the gesture aborted and aching. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to let someone in without making them a target. How to care without trying to control. How to want something without destroying it in the process of claiming it." "Then we'll figure it out together." Lena's voice was steady, despite the fear and hope warring in her chest. "But you have to stop running first." For a long moment, Vincent just looked at her, really looked, like he was memorizing her face or searching for something he'd lost and finally found. Then he did the bravest thing she'd ever seen him do. He stepped closer, closing the distance he'd maintained so carefully, and pressed his forehead against hers with a sigh that sounded like surrender. "You're going to be the end of me, Lena Moore," he whispered. "Maybe," she whispered back. "Or maybe I'm the beginning of whoever you're supposed to become." Neither of them moved, caught in the space between professional distance and something infinitely more complicated. Both of them terrified and neither of them willing to be the first to step away. The coffee went cold on Vincent's desk while they stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air in a moment that felt both infinite and fragile. Lena could feel the tension in his body, the war between what he wanted and what he'd trained himself to deny. His hand finally moved, fingertips grazing her jaw with a touch so careful it made her ache. "I should step back," he murmured, but he didn't move. "You should do a lot of things you don't do," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. And you do a lot of things you shouldn't. Maybe just this once, do what you actually want. Vincent's breath hitched, and for a heartbeat she thought he would close that final distance, would kiss her and shatter whatever remained of the boundaries between them. Instead, his phone erupted with a harsh ringtone that shattered the moment like glass. He pulled away immediately, his expression shifting from vulnerable to controlled so quickly it felt like whiplash. He answered without looking at the screen, his voice dropping into that cold, efficient tone that meant business. Caldero. A pause. When? Another pause, longer this time, and something dangerous flickered across his face. Lock it down. Nobody moves until I get there. He ended the call and turned to Lena, and whatever softness had existed moments ago was gone, buried under layers of the man who ruled through fear and precision. I need to handle something. It may take several hours. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking his phone for messages she couldn't see. James will ensure you have anything you need. Vincent. Not now, Lena. He stopped at the door, his back to her, his shoulders rigid. What just happened here? We'll discuss it later. When I can think clearly. When there isn't a crisis that requires my immediate attention. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in his office with cold coffee and the ghost of his touch still burning on her skin. The crisis, whatever it was, consumed Vincent for 3 days. Lena barely saw him except in passing, glimpses of him surrounded by grim-faced men in expensive suits, his phone permanently attached to his ear, his expression growing harder and more remote with each passing hour. She delivered his coffee at the appointed times, but he barely acknowledged her presence, his mind clearly occupied with problems that made their almost moment seem trivial by comparison. Marcus finally took pity on her on the 3rd day, finding her in the kitchen staring at the espresso machine like it held answers. It's not personal, he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. I didn't ask. You didn't have to. You've got that look. Marcus poured himself coffee from the pot she kept for the regular staff, adding enough sugar to make her teeth hurt just watching. One of our shipments got intercepted, not by law enforcement, by competitors. The kind of competitors who don't believe in negotiation or mercy. Lena's stomach dropped. Is Vincent in danger? Vincent is always in danger. It's the baseline condition of his existence. Marcus studied her over his coffee cup. But right now, he's also furious, which makes him more dangerous than whatever's threatening him. He'll handle it. He always does. How? However he needs to. Marcus set down his cup. Look, I'm going to give you the same advice I give anyone who gets close to him. Don't mistake intensity for intimacy. Vincent burns hot when he focuses on something, but that focus shifts. Right now, you've got his attention. Tomorrow, it might be a business deal or a threat or his sister's wedding. The smart play is to enjoy it while it lasts and not expect permanence. You think I'm expecting something from him? I think you're human, and humans make the mistake of believing that proximity equals connection. Marcus's expression softened slightly. I've watched a lot of people orbit Vincent over the years. The ones who survive are the ones who remember that he's a black hole, powerful, fascinating, and absolutely capable of destroying anything that gets too close. That's a depressing metaphor. It's an accurate one. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. I don't know if that makes you lucky or doomed, but it's something. After he left, Lena stood in the kitchen for a long time, trying to decide if she should feel encouraged or terrified. She settled on both. Vincent returned to himself gradually, like a man surfacing from deep water. By the 4th day, the grim-faced men were gone, replaced by his usual rotation of business associates and carefully scheduled appointments. The tension in his shoulders eased fractionally, and when Lena delivered his afternoon coffee, he actually looked at her instead of through her. Thank you, he said, and the words carried weight beyond simple courtesy. Rough week? Lena asked, keeping her tone carefully neutral. Rough year, but this week particularly so. Vincent took a long drink of his coffee, closing his eyes briefly in appreciation. I've missed this. The actual taste of it, not just the caffeine. I've been making it the same way all week. I know, I haven't been present enough to notice. He set down the cup and finally met her eyes directly. I owe you an apology. Lena felt her heartbeat accelerate. For what specifically? You've given me several options to choose from. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. For walking away from a conversation we needed to finish. For disappearing into work and leaving you in limbo. For being exactly the kind of emotionally unavailable disaster that makes people write cautionary tales. That's oddly self-aware for someone who claims not to feel things. I never claimed not to feel things. I claimed not to have room for them. Vincent stood, moving to the window with the restless energy of someone who'd been sitting too long. The shipment that was intercepted contained materials for a construction project, completely legitimate, fully documented, exactly the kind of boring business that keeps my empire running. But the people who took it wanted to send a message. They wanted me to know they could reach into my operations and take whatever they wanted. What did you do? I sent a message back, the kind of message that ensures they'll never attempt it again. His voice was flat, but something dark moved in his expression. I'm not a good man, Lena. I do things that would horrify you if you knew the details. I make decisions that protect my interests and my people, and I don't lose sleep over the casualties. Is this the part where you try to scare me away again? This is the part where I give you complete honesty, the way you asked for. Vincent turned to face her fully. 4 days ago, you stood in this office and told me to stop running. You said you weren't asking for love, just honesty. So here it is. I want you. Not as a barista, not as a convenient illusion of humanity, but as someone who matters in ways I don't have vocabulary to explain. It terrifies me because everyone I've ever cared about becomes a target, or a liability, or both. Lena's throat felt tight. What happened to no emotions, no attachments, no love? That rule was designed to protect both of us. I'm realizing it might be too late for protection. He moved closer but maintained distance, like he didn't trust himself to get too near. I can't promise you safety, Lena. I can't promise you normalcy or simplicity or any of the things you probably deserve. What I can promise is honesty, even when it's ugly, protection, even when it requires violence, and my complete attention, for however long this lasts before you come to your senses and run. You're assuming I'm going to run. I'm assuming you're smart enough to recognize danger when it's standing in front of you, confessing feelings it has no business having. Lena took a breath, steadying herself. I grew up in a house where my father left before I could form memories, and my mother worked 3 jobs to keep us barely afloat. I learned early that safety is an illusion, that normalcy is a privilege, and that simplicity is just another word for giving up on wanting more. So no, Vincent, I'm not looking for safe or normal or simple. I'm looking for real. Real is complicated. I'd rather have complicated truth than comfortable lies. She stepped closer, closing the distance he'd maintained. You want honesty? Here's mine. I'm in this. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'm choosing it with open eyes. Not because I'm naive or reckless, but because for the first time in my life, someone sees me as more than invisible. You look at me like I matter, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep that. Vincent's control finally cracked. He reached for her, one hand cupping her face while the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him with a need that made her breath catch. His forehead dropped to hers again, but this time there was nothing tentative about it. You matter too much, he said roughly. That's the problem. Then we'll both have to live with the problem. He kissed her then, and it wasn't gentle or tentative or careful. It was desperate and claiming and honest in ways that words had failed to be. Lena melted into it, into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal intensity. It felt like falling and flying simultaneously, like stepping off a cliff and discovering she could breathe underwater. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent's eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them, his carefully maintained control in complete ruins. This changes everything, he said. I know. People will notice. They'll talk. Some will try to use you against me. Let them try. Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. I'm not as fragile as you think. You're stronger than I deserve. Vincent's thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But strength doesn't make you bulletproof, and my enemies don't have consciences about collateral damage. Then we'll be careful, we'll be smart, but we're not going to pretend this isn't happening. She covered his hand with hers. No more running, remember? Vincent closed his eyes briefly, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him.
I don't know how to do this without destroying it.
Then we'll learn together. That's what people do when they care about each other. They figure it out as they go. I'm not good at figuring things out organically. I prefer plans and strategies and controlled outcomes.
Too bad. You're dating someone who ruins your coffee orders and asks uncomfortable questions. Chaos is part of the package.
Lena smiled, feeling something bright and terrifying bloom in her chest. Are we dating? Is that the right word for whatever this is? Vincent pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her with possessive certainty. I don't care what we call it, as long as you understand that you're mine now. Not in the sense of ownership, but in the sense of, he struggled for words, his usual eloquence failing him. In the sense of mattering, Lena finished. I'm yours in the sense that I matter to you and you matter to me, and we're choosing to navigate the complications together. Yes, exactly that. He buried his face in her hair, breathing her in like she was oxygen. This is probably the worst decision I've ever made. I'm definitely the worst decision you've ever made, but I'm also going to be the best one. Vincent laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Your confidence is either inspiring or concerning. It's both. Get used to it. They stood there, wrapped around each other in his office, while his afternoon meetings waited and her coffee-making duties went ignored. And for the first time since she'd met him, Vincent Caldero looked like a man who'd found something worth more than control. The next 3 weeks existed in a strange bubble of intensity and discovery. Vincent didn't change who he was. He remained cold with his business associates, ruthless with his competitors, and absolutely controlled in his public persona. But in private, in the spaces between meetings and obligations, he unraveled for her. He told her about his father, a man who'd built the family empire through violence and fear, who taught Vincent that love was weakness and mercy was suicide. He told her about watching his mother fade into irrelevance, a woman who'd once been vibrant but learned to make herself small to survive her husband's cruelty. He told her about raising Sophia while simultaneously running criminal enterprises, trying to give his sister the childhood he'd never had while becoming exactly what his father had trained him to be. I was 19 when he died, Vincent said one night in the library. Lena curled against his side while rain hammered the windows. Heart attack brought on by 40 years of rage and red meat. Everyone expected me to grieve. Instead, I felt relieved, which made me realize I'd become exactly like him, someone who viewed death as a strategic opportunity rather than a loss. You're not like him, Lena said firmly. I'm more like him than I want to admit. The difference is I'm aware of it, which either makes me better or just more self-conscious about being terrible. You're not terrible, you're just convinced you are, which is different. Lena shifted to look at him. Your father didn't love Sophia the way you do. He didn't protect her or shield her or try to give her a different life. You do those things because underneath all the control and calculation, you're capable of genuine care. You just don't trust it. Vincent's hand moved through her hair absently. Care and love aren't the same thing. Then what is love, according to Vincent Caldero? He was quiet for a long moment. Love is what I feel when I watch you sleep and contemplate murdering anyone who might hurt you. Love is the reason I've doubled your security without telling you because the thought of you being unprotected makes me physically ill. Love is why I lie awake at night cataloging all the ways this could end badly and trying to construct strategies to prevent each one. Lena's breath caught. That's the first time you've used that word. I know. Vincent's voice was tight. I didn't mean to. It slipped out. Don't take it back. I can't take it back. It's true, which makes it infinitely more dangerous than anything else I've ever said to you. He turned her face toward his expression raw. I love you, Lena Moore. It's the most reckless thing I've ever admitted, and I have no idea how to handle it without trying to control every aspect of your existence to keep you safe. You could start by trusting me to help keep myself safe. I could, but my default setting is possession disguised as protection, and I'm going to have to actively fight that instinct every single day. Then fight it. I'll help you. Lena kissed him softly. I love you too, by the way. In case that wasn't obvious from the fact that I've completely rearranged my life to make you coffee and tolerate your brooding. I don't brood. I contemplate with intensity. You absolutely brood.
You're brooding right now while trying to process having feelings. Vincent pulled her into his lap, his arms wrapping around her with that possessive certainty she was beginning to recognize as his version of affection. Having feelings is exhausting. I don't know how normal people do this all the time. Normal people don't run criminal empires while having feelings. They just have feelings and occasionally eat ice cream to cope. I don't eat ice cream. I know, it's deeply concerning. Lena settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We're going to be okay, you know, this thing between us. We're going to figure it out. Vincent didn't answer immediately, and when he did, his voice carried a weight she didn't understand. I hope you're right. The unraveling came on a Wednesday, 3 weeks and 2 days after their first kiss, delivered in the form of photographs that appeared on Vincent's desk during a routine morning meeting. Lena knew something was wrong the moment she entered his office for the 2 o'clock coffee delivery. The room was empty except for Vincent, who stood at his window with his back to the door, his entire body radiating a fury so cold it made the air feel thin. Vincent? She set down the coffee, her instincts screaming danger. You need to leave. His voice was flat, dead, nothing like the man who'd whispered love confessions 3 nights ago. What happened? I said leave, Lena. He still didn't turn around. Go back to your apartment, pack your things. James will arrange transportation to wherever you want to go, along with 6 months severance and a reference for whatever fictional job you'd like on your resume. Her blood went cold. You're firing me. I'm releasing you from our arrangement. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not when you won't even look at me while you do it. Lena moved closer, refusing to be dismissed. What happened? What changed between last night and today? Reality reasserted itself. Vincent's hands were fisted at his sides, his knuckles white. This was always going to end, Lena. I told you that from the beginning. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon. You're not making sense. Yesterday you loved me. Today you're throwing me out. What the hell happened in the last 24 hours? Vincent finally turned, and his expression was the coldest thing she'd ever seen. Emptier than when they'd first met, harder than when he'd handled his business crisis, absolutely devoid of anything resembling the vulnerability he'd shown her. Someone photographed us, he said flatly. Multiple occasions, multiple locations, enough evidence to make it clear that you're not just my employee. Those photographs are currently being shopped to my competitors, my enemies, and several people who would love nothing more than to hurt me by destroying you. Lena's stomach dropped. So we deal with it. We increase security, we end this before you get hurt. Vincent moved to his desk, pulled out an envelope, and held it out to her. This is everything I promised, plus additional compensation for the inconvenience. Take it and go, Lena. Today. Right now. Before whoever has those photographs decides that killing you is more valuable than selling information about you. I'm not leaving because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm being strategic. You've become a liability, and I don't maintain liabilities. His voice was brutal, clinical, designed to cut. This was always a transaction, remember? You made my coffee, I paid you well. We both pretended there was more to it than basic economics. But the pretense has become dangerous, so we're ending it. Lena felt like she'd been slapped. You don't mean that. I mean every word. You were useful for a while. Pleasant company, interesting conversation, adequate coffee. But the cost has exceeded the value, and I'm terminating the arrangement. He set the envelope on the desk between them like a wall. Take the money, Lena. Walk away. Find some normal man who works normal hours and doesn't have enemies cataloging his weaknesses. Forget this ever happened. I won't forget. You won't let me forget. Her voice shook with anger and hurt. You're doing this because you're terrified that someone might hurt me. So you've decided to hurt me first. It's control masquerading as protection, exactly what you said you'd fight against. I've decided to prioritize your survival over my comfort. That's not control. That's pragmatism. It's cowardice. The word hung between them like a blade. You told me you loved me, Vincent. You said you wanted to figure this out together. You made promises about honesty and partnership, and at the first real threat, you're throwing me away like I'm disposable. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, maybe, or recognition, but it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. I lied, he said simply. Or I was wrong. Take your pick. Either way, the result is the same. This is over, you're leaving, and we're both moving on to more appropriate arrangements. Lena stared at him, looking for the man who'd held her 3 nights ago and whispered about love while rain beat against the windows. She found only the cold stranger who'd hired her 6 months ago with warnings about attachment and emotion. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "I regret a lot of things. This won't make the top 10. Vincent sat behind his desk, already dismissing her. "James is waiting in the hallway to escort you out. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Lena wanted to scream, to rage, to force him to see what he was destroying. Instead, she picked up the envelope, held his gaze for one long moment, and said the only thing she could think of that might penetrate his armor. "You're right about one thing. You did become your father. Not because you're cruel or violent, but because you're so terrified of losing control that you'd rather destroy something beautiful than risk it destroying you. He'd be proud of how well you learned that lesson." She left before she could see if her words landed, walking past James without acknowledging him, maintaining her composure until she reached the elevator. Only when the doors closed and she was alone did she let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Vincent Caldero had told her he loved her, then proven it by breaking her heart to keep her safe. She should have hated him for it. Instead, she just felt hollow. The apartment Vincent had provided felt like a mausoleum now, filled with expensive furniture and empty spaces where their almost future had lived. Lena spent the first night sitting on the floor of the bedroom, staring at the city lights and trying to understand how something that had felt so solid could disintegrate in the span of a single conversation. The envelope sat unopened on the kitchen counter, thick with money she didn't want to touch because accepting it would make everything he'd said true. Would confirm that she'd been a transaction, a temporary arrangement, something to be compensated and dismissed when the cost-benefit analysis shifted. Her phone rang at 2 in the morning. Sophia's name flashed on the screen. "Don't hang up," Sophia said the moment Lena answered. "I know my brother is an idiot, and I know he hurt you, and I know you probably want nothing to do with anyone named Caldero right now, but I need you to listen to me for 5 minutes." Lena's throat felt tight. "How did you know?" "Because Vinny showed up at my apartment 3 hours ago looking like someone had died, drank half a bottle of my expensive whiskey, and told me he'd done something necessary and unforgivable. It didn't take a genius to figure out he'd pushed you away." Sophia's voice softened. "Are you okay?" "No." The word came out broken. "But I will be. I survived before him. I'll survive after." "You shouldn't have to just survive, Lena. You deserve better than my brother's trauma response disguised as protection." Sophia paused, and Lana could hear traffic in the background. "He loves you. I've never seen him love anyone except me, and even that he does from a distance. But he looks at you like you're air, and he's only just realized he needs to breathe. He has a terrible way of showing it. He has a terrible way of showing everything. Our father beat emotions out of him so thoroughly that Vinny thinks feeling anything is weakness, and the only way he knows to protect what he loves is to push it away before someone else can destroy it." Sophia's voice turned fierce. "But that doesn't mean you have to accept his damage as your sentence. You get to decide if this is worth fighting for or if you're better off walking away." Lena closed her eyes, feeling tears she'd been holding back finally spill over. "He told me I was a liability, that the arrangement had exceeded its value. He made it sound like I was nothing more than a convenient distraction that became inconvenient. He's a liar and a coward, and I love him desperately, but that doesn't make either of those things less true." Sophia sighed. "I'm not calling to defend him, Lena. I'm calling because you deserve to know the whole truth, and Vinny's too busy martyring himself to tell you." "What truth?" "The photographs that scared him? They weren't just evidence of your relationship. They included locations, timestamps, patterns of movement. Whoever took them was building a profile, the kind of intelligence package you create before you make a move. Someone isn't just threatening to expose you, they're preparing to take you." Lena's blood went cold. "He didn't tell me that part." "Of course he didn't, because if he told you the real danger, you might choose to stay and face it together, and Vinny can't handle that level of vulnerability. It's easier for him to be the villain who pushes you away than the man who admits he's terrified of losing you." "That's insane. That's trauma. That's what happens when you're raised by a monster who teaches you that everyone you love becomes a weapon your enemies can use against you. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. I'm not excusing him. I'm just giving you context so you can make an informed decision about what happens next. Lena wiped her eyes, her mind racing. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever protects your heart and your life, in that order. If that means walking away from Vinny and never looking back, I'll help you disappear so thoroughly even his resources won't find you. If that means fighting for him despite his very best efforts to make you hate him, I'll help with that too. Sophia paused. But Lena, if you do fight for him, make sure it's because you want him, not because you want to save him. Nobody can save Vinny except himself, and he has to choose to do the work. After they hung up, Lena sat in the dark for another hour, turning Sophia's words over in her mind. Vincent had hurt her, yes, had been brutal and cold and exactly as destructive as he'd warned her he would be. But underneath the cruelty, she'd heard something else. The desperate fear of a man who loved her enough to destroy their relationship rather than risk her life. It was noble and idiotic and absolutely unacceptable. By dawn, Lena had made her decision. She spent the next 2 days rebuilding her life with methodical precision. She found a small studio apartment in a neighborhood Vincent wouldn't think to look, paid 6 months' rent with his severance money, and donated the expensive wardrobe he'd provided to a women's shelter. She kept only what was hers, her books, her clothes from before, the evidence of a life that had existed before Vincent Caldero had walked into her cafe. On the third day, she called the Morningside Cafe and asked if they were still hiring. Lena? Her former boss sounded shocked. I heard you'd moved on to bigger things. The bigger things didn't work out. Any chance you need a waitress who makes decent coffee? When can you start? Tomorrow morning. But returning to the cafe felt like stepping backward and forward simultaneously. Nothing had changed. The same chipped brick, the same wobbling chairs, the same elderly crossword man who looked up when she walked in and smiled like she'd never left. Thought you'd forgotten about us, he said. Just took a detour. I'm back now. Good. The coffee's been terrible since you left. Lena smiled despite the ache in her chest. I'll fix that. She fell back into the rhythm of her old life with surprising ease. Or maybe it just felt easier because she was actively trying not to think about Vincent. She worked 60-hour weeks again, picked up extra shifts, stayed busy enough that exhaustion became a shield against feeling too much. It worked until the second Tuesday, when Marcus walked into the cafe at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon. He sat in Vincent's old booth, his bulk making the broken vinyl seat look even more pathetic, and waited until Lena had no choice but to approach. What can I get you? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Information, mostly, but I'll settle for coffee if you're not selling the other thing. Marcus studied her with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. You look terrible. You look like a concrete wall wearing a suit. We all have our challenges. Fair enough. He didn't smile. Vincent sent me. Lena's heart kicked against her ribs, but she kept her expression blank. Tell Vincent that I don't work for him anymore, which means he doesn't get to send people to check on me like I'm a package he's tracking. He didn't send me to check on you. He sent me to give you this. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket, setting it on the table between them. Before you refuse it, you should know what's inside. More money? A non-disclosure agreement? A formal apology written by his lawyers? Information about the people who photographed you. Names, locations, organizational structure, and evidence of their current surveillance operations. Marcus tapped the envelope. Vincent's had them under investigation since the photographs appeared. He's building a case to dismantle their entire network, but it's taking time, and time means you're still in danger. Lena stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Why would he give me this? Because you were right about him being a coward. He pushed you away to protect you, but you're not actually safer just because you're not standing next to him. The people who targeted you don't care about your employment status. They care that you matter to him, and that makes you valuable regardless of where you sleep at night. So this is what? A warning? A threat assessment? It's him trying to protect you the only way he knows how, through information and control. Marcus leaned back, the booth creaking ominously. He's also been personally handling your security for the past week. You haven't noticed because he's actually competent at surveillance, but there have been 2 armed guards rotating shifts outside your apartment building and another team tracking your movements whenever you leave. Lena felt dizzy. That's insane. That's love, Caldero style. Obsessive, controlling, and absolutely uncompromising when it comes to the safety of people he cares about. Marcus stood, leaving the envelope on the table. Read it or don't. Use the information or throw it away. But know that he's not letting this go, Lena. He might have pushed you out of his life, but he hasn't stopped trying to keep you alive. Why are you telling me this? Why does he care if I know? Marcus paused at the door, something almost like sympathy crossing his face. Because he's dying without you, and I've never seen Vincent Caldero die before. It's deeply unsettling, and I'd like it to stop. After he left, Lena stood holding the envelope for a full minute before finally opening it. Inside were detailed dossiers on 3 individuals connected to a rival organization, surveillance photographs showing their patterns of movement, and a handwritten note in Vincent's precise script. The note said simply, "You were never a liability. You were the only thing that mattered. I'm sorry I was too broken to handle that properly. These are the people who threatened you. I'm handling them. Stay safe. Don't come back. I love you too much to risk you again." V. Lena read the note 7 times, looking for hidden meaning or coded messages, finding only raw honesty and the kind of pain that came from choosing duty over desire. She burned the note in her kitchen sink and memorized every word first. The week before Sophia's wedding, Lena received a call from an unknown number that turned out to be James, Vincent's butler, speaking in his precisely modulated British accent. "Miss Moore, I apologize for the intrusion, but Miss Sophia has requested your presence at her wedding. She wanted me to assure you that Mr. Caldero is aware of the invitation and has agreed not to make the situation awkward, which I'm told is his version of blessing the arrangement." Lena closed her eyes. "James, I don't think that's a good idea." "Miss Sophia anticipated your hesitation. She asked me to remind you that this is her wedding, not her brother's therapy session, and she would like at least one person there who isn't either terrified of him or trying to extract business favors. She described you as someone who makes her feel less alone in understanding what it's like to love a Caldero. That's manipulative and effective. Miss Sophia is her brother's sister. Manipulation is a family trait, though she wields it with more warmth." James paused. "For what it's worth, Miss Moore, Mr. Caldero has been exceptionally difficult since your departure. He's reverted to sleeping 4 hours a night, hasn't smiled in 2 weeks, and yesterday fired 3 people for brewing inadequate coffee. It's been rather like watching a particularly dramatic regression." "That's not my problem anymore, James." "No, it isn't. But it perhaps illustrates that his decision to end your arrangement was motivated by concern for your safety rather than lack of feeling. Not that motivation excuses impact, but context sometimes helps with processing." Lena felt her throat tighten. "Tell Sophia I'll think about it. She'll take that as a yes and has already arranged for a dress in your size to be delivered to your current address, which she definitely didn't obtain through her brother's security resources." James's tone was perfectly bland. "The wedding is Saturday at 3. Transportation will be provided if needed." The dress arrived the next day. Simple, elegant, the kind of soft blue that suggested Sophia actually knew Lena's taste rather than guessing. Tucked in the box was a note in feminine handwriting that said, "Please come. I promise Vinny will behave, and you deserve to see him squirm in formal wear while pretending he's fine. Also, I need someone to stop me from ugly crying through my vows, and you seem like you'd be good at that. S." Lena held the dress up to the light, trying to decide if attending her ex-lover's sister's wedding counted as emotional masochism or an opportunity for closure. She chose closure and immediately regretted it. The wedding venue looked even more beautiful than it had during the walkthrough, transformed by spring flowers and the kind of elegant simplicity that suggested significant money deployed with tasteful restraint. Lena arrived early, hoping to avoid the crush of guests and the inevitable moment when she'd have to face Vincent. Sophia found her standing near the garden entrance, looking overwhelmed and underdressed despite the perfect dress. "You came," Sophia said, pulling her into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and nervous bride. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either, but you asked,
And apparently I'm incapable of saying no to Calderos. Lena pulled back, studying Sophia's face. You look beautiful. Terrified, but beautiful. I'm getting married in front of 200 people, half of whom are judging whether my husband is good enough for Vinny's sister, and the other half are wondering if Vinny's going to have him killed if the marriage goes badly. So yes, terrified is accurate. Sophia's smile was shaky, but also happy. Turns out you can be both. Where is Vincent? Probably terrifying my future husband in the groom's suite while pretending to have a normal brotherly conversation about commitment and responsibility. Sophia lowered her voice. He knows you're here. I told him this morning. He asked if you needed anything and then locked himself in his room for 2 hours. Sophia, I'm not here to cause drama at your wedding. I know. You're here because you're kind and loyal and you actually care about me despite all the complications, which is exactly why I wanted you here. Sophia squeezed her hand. Just, if you happen to see him, if you happen to talk to him, maybe remember that he's an idiot, but he's trying, in his own broken, controlling, absolutely infuriating way. Before Lena could respond, Sophia was whisked away by her wedding planner, leaving Lena standing alone in a garden full of strangers who probably all knew exactly who she was and what she'd meant to Vincent Caldero. She made it through the ceremony without incident, sitting in the back row and watching Sophia marry her earnest English teacher with vows that were beautiful and honest, and made Lena's chest ache with something that felt like hope and loss combined. Vincent stood at the front as the man giving her away, and even from a distance, Lena could see the rigid control in his posture, the way he held himself like a man walking through a minefield of emotions he didn't know how to process. He didn't look at her once during the ceremony, which should have been a relief but felt like a rejection. The reception was held in a converted barn that had been transformed into something magical with lights and flowers and the kind of ambiance that made even cynics believe in romance. Lena found a quiet corner near the bar, nursing champagne she didn't want and trying to decide if leaving early would be rude or self-preservation. You look beautiful. Vincent's voice came from behind her, quiet and rough and painfully familiar. Lena's hand tightened on her champagne glass, but she didn't turn around. You look miserable, she said. Accurate assessment. He moved to stand beside her, maintaining careful distance, both of them facing the dance floor where Sophia and her new husband were swaying to something slow and romantic. Thank you for coming. It means everything to Sophia. I didn't come for you. I know. That's what makes it meaningful. Vincent's hands were in his pockets, his shoulders tight under his formal jacket. How have you been? That's a terrible question, and we both know it. Fair enough. How's the cafe? Still dying slowly, still serving terrible coffee to people who don't care about quality. Still exactly what it was before you walked in and ruined my life. Lena finally looked at him, and the impact was physical. He looked thinner, harder, like he'd shed whatever softness their relationship had created and returned to being a weapon wrapped in expensive tailoring. I didn't ruin your life. I complicated it temporarily and then removed myself from the equation. You're free to return to normalcy. There's no returning to normalcy after you, Vincent. That's what you don't understand. You can't dismantle someone's understanding of what they're capable of feeling and then expect them to go back to being satisfied with less. Something flickered in his expression. Pain or recognition, or maybe just exhaustion. I'm sorry. For which part? Pushing me away or making me care enough that being pushed away actually hurt? Both, all of it. Every decision I made that led to you standing here looking at me like I'm someone who disappointed you. Vincent's voice was quiet but steady. I handled it badly, Lena. I was scared, and I let that fear make me cruel because I thought cruelty would keep you safe. Did it work? Am I safe? The people who photographed you are no longer a threat. I made sure of that. His tone suggested methods she didn't want to examine too closely. You're being monitored by a security team you're not supposed to know about, and every person who's considered you as leverage has been made aware that the consequences of touching you would be catastrophic. So you're still trying to control my life just from a distance. I'm still trying to keep you alive. There's a difference. Lena took a long drink of champagne, buying time to process the storm of emotions his proximity created. Why are you telling me this?
You could have just stayed away. Let me believe you'd moved on. Because I can't stay away. I've tried. I've spent 3 weeks attempting to convince myself that ending things was the right choice, that you're better off without me, that I'm capable of moving forward without you. Vincent finally turned to face her fully, and his eyes held a devastation he wasn't bothering to hide anymore. I can't do it, Lena. I can't sleep, can't focus, can't function like a normal human being because every part of my life reminds me that you're not in it anymore. That's what happens when you destroy something instead of protecting it. I know. I'm aware I'm the architect of my own misery, and I have no right to stand here asking you for anything. But I need you to know that I didn't stop loving you. I just convinced myself that loving you from a distance was safer than loving you up close where my world could contaminate yours. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. Your world already contaminated mine. The moment you walked into my cafe and looked at me like I was visible, my world changed. You don't get to take that back and pretend I can return to being someone who doesn't know what it's like to matter. I don't want you to go back. I want... Vincent stopped, his jaw clenching as he fought for control. I don't know what I want. That's the problem. I want you safe, but I want you with me. I want to protect you from my world, but you're already part of it. I want to be better than my father, but I keep making the same mistakes he did, pushing away the people I love because I'm terrified of losing them. So what now? Lena asked. You've apologized. You've explained. You've made it clear that you're still emotionally unavailable while simultaneously being completely obsessed with my safety. Where does that leave us? Vincent looked at her with an expression that broke her heart all over again. It leaves us exactly where we started, with me wanting something I don't know how to have without destroying it. Then maybe you need to learn, Lena said quietly. Maybe you need to stop trying to control every outcome and just trust that some things are worth the risk. I don't know how to do that. Then figure it out, Vincent, because I'm not going to keep standing still while you decide whether I'm worth the effort of changing. Lena set down her champagne glass with careful precision. I love you. That hasn't changed despite your very best efforts to make me hate you. But I'm not going to be your security concern or your guilty conscience or your evidence that you're capable of human feeling. I'm either your partner, actual partner, equal partnership, working through the scary parts together, or I'm nothing. Vincent's breath hitched. I don't want you to be nothing. Then stop treating me like I am. Lena stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the fine tremor in his hands that suggested he was barely holding himself together. I'm going to leave this wedding in about an hour. I'm going to go back to my tiny apartment and my dying cafe and my life that's smaller than it was, but at least belongs to me. And you're going to decide whether you can actually handle a relationship that requires vulnerability, or whether you're going to spend the rest of your life alone because it's easier than risking your heart. Lena, don't. She held up her hand, stopping whatever he was about to say. Don't make promises you're not ready to keep. Don't tell me you'll change if you haven't done the work to figure out how. Just decide what you actually want, Vincent, and then decide if you're brave enough to go after it. She walked away before he could respond, feeling his eyes on her back and refusing to turn around because turning around would mean staying, and staying would mean accepting less than she deserved. Sophia caught her near the exit, her bride's intuition apparently functioning despite champagne and happiness. You talked to him, Sophia said. I told him to figure out what he wants and stop destroying things preemptively. Lena tried to smile. Your wedding was beautiful, Sophia. I'm glad I came. Are you leaving? I think I need to. Before I do something stupid like forgive him without him actually changing. Sophia hugged her tightly. That's fair. But Lena, my brother's an idiot, but he's a determined idiot. When he decides he wants something, he doesn't stop until he gets it. So don't be surprised if he actually does the work this time. I won't hold my breath. Smart woman, but maybe keep your schedule flexible, just in case. Lena left the wedding feeling hollowed out and strangely hopeful, like she'd drawn a line in the sand and finally made Vincent Caldero responsible for deciding whether to cross it. She just hoped he was capable of taking the first step. The music from the reception drifted through the open terrace doors, a waltz that Sophia had chosen specifically because their mother used to hum it while cooking dinner in the brief years before their father's cruelty had silenced all the music in their house. Vincent hadn't told Lena that detail, but she could see it in the way his jaw tightened, in the slight tension that entered his shoulders whenever the melody swelled. "Dance with me," she said, taking his hand. "Here? There's no one watching." "Exactly. No performance, no expectations, just us." Lena pulled him into the proper position, one hand in his, the other on his shoulder. "You do know how to dance, don't you?" "My father insisted on lessons, said a man who couldn't lead on the dance floor couldn't lead anywhere else." Vincent's mouth twisted bitterly. He had opinions about everything. "Then prove him right about this one thing and lead me." She stepped closer, feeling him relax fractionally into the familiar rhythm. "See? You're better at this than you think." They moved together on the empty terrace, the music floating around them while the celebration continued without them inside. Vincent danced with the same precision he applied to everything else, but there was something different now, a looseness in his movements, a willingness to follow the music instead of trying to control it. "I never thought I'd have this," he said quietly, his breath warm against her temple. "Dancing at your sister's wedding? Someone to dance with who doesn't expect anything except honesty." Vincent pulled her closer, abandoning the formal hold for something more intimate. "Someone who sees all the broken parts and doesn't try to fix them or run from them." "You're not broken, Vincent. You're just convinced you are, which is different." Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "You were shaped by cruelty and you responded by building walls. That's not broken. That's survival. The question is whether you're ready to do more than just survive." "I'm ready to try. That's the best I can offer right now." "Right now is all we have. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." She looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability he was finally allowing her to witness. "Tell me something true, something you've never told anyone else." Vincent's steps faltered briefly before he recovered. "That's a dangerous request." "I specialize in dangerous requests. You should know that by now." He was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, barely audible over the music, he spoke. "I'm terrified that I'll wake up one morning and discover this was all temporary, that you'll realize what everyone else eventually realizes, that I'm too damaged to love properly, too controlled to give you what you deserve, too much like my father to ever be different." His voice cracked. "I'm terrified that you'll leave, and the worst part is that I'll understand why." Lena stopped dancing, cupping his face with both hands and forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me very carefully, Vincent Caldero. I am not leaving. Not when you make mistakes, not when you relapse into old patterns, not when you're difficult or controlling or scared. I'm choosing this with complete clarity about who you are and who you're trying to become." "You say that now." "I say it now, and I'll say it tomorrow, and I'll say it every time you need to hear it until you finally believe me." Her voice was fierce. "You want to know something true? I'm terrified too. I'm terrified that I'm not strong enough for your world, that I'll become a liability you have to protect, that loving you will require more courage than I actually possess. But I'm doing it anyway, because the alternative, a safe life without you, isn't really living at all." Vincent's eyes were suspiciously bright. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Take my fear and make it feel less heavy by sharing it. That's what partnership means. We carry the heavy things together." Lena smiled softly. "Now tell me something else true, something happier this time." He considered, then smiled, genuinely smiled, the expression transforming his face. "The morning after I hired you, I almost called James and told him to cancel the arrangement. Not because I didn't want you there, but because I wanted you there too much. I knew within 1 week that you were going to complicate everything. And yet you kept me around. I kept you around because complication with you was better than simplicity without you." Vincent resumed dancing, pulling her back into the waltz. "I told myself it was about the coffee, about having someone honest in my life, about all the practical reasons that made sense. But the truth is, I was already halfway in love with you and terrified of what that meant." "When did you know?" "That you loved me, I mean." "The day you brought me coffee and told me the blueberry muffins were fresh, but everything else was lies. You looked at me like I was just another customer who needed honesty, and I realized I'd been surrounded by people who treated me like a king or a weapon for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be human." His hand tightened on her waist. "What about you?" When did you know? Lena thought back through the past months, the coffee deliveries, the late-night conversations, the moment he'd stood at his window and confessed his sister's wedding fears. The day you took me to meet Sophia, not because you wanted to show me off, but because you needed proof that you weren't as lonely as you felt. That vulnerability, that willingness to admit you needed something, that's when I knew I was completely gone. That was before I told you I loved you.
I know. I was waiting for you to catch up. She grinned at his expression. What? You're not the only one who can keep secrets. Vincent laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. You're going to keep me honest whether I like it or not. That's the plan. Someone has to. Inside the reception, the waltz ended and transitioned into something more upbeat. Vincent slowed their dancing, but didn't release her, his arms remaining wrapped around her waist like he physically couldn't let go. We should probably go back inside, Lena said, without making any move to leave. Probably. Sophia will notice we've been gone and make knowing faces at me for the rest of the evening. She already makes knowing faces at you. I think it's her default expression where you're concerned. She's been making those faces since she was 6 years old and figured out that I was pretending to be invincible. Vincent's expression softened. She's the only person who's ever seen through me before you. I used to find it exhausting. Now I'm grateful for it. You should tell her that. I should do a lot of things I don't do. Then start doing them. Start with your sister, because she loves you and deserves to hear that you appreciate her. Lena poked his chest lightly. Then work your way up to the harder stuff, like admitting when you're scared or asking for help or accepting that you don't have to control everything. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary. She kissed him softly. I'll help you. That's what partners do. Before Vincent could respond, the terrace doors opened and Sophia appeared, her wedding dress rustling around her like she'd walked through clouds. There you are. Michael and I are about to cut the cake, and I need my brother present to glare disapprovingly at the photographer who keeps trying to get candid shots up my dress. Vincent's expression immediately hardened into the protective fury Lena had come to recognize as his default setting where Sophia was concerned. Which photographer? The one in the tacky bow tie. Marcus already threatened him once, but apparently he needs a more authoritative threat. Sophia grinned. Come intimidate him properly, Vinny. You're so good at it. You're enjoying this far too much. I'm getting married. I'm allowed to enjoy watching you channel your control issues into socially acceptable protective behavior. Sophia turned to Lena. You're coming too. I need witnesses in case Vinny actually commits murder at my wedding reception. He won't commit murder, Lena said confidently. He'll just make the photographer wish he had. Vincent's smile was sharp and dangerous. She knows me so well already. They went inside together, Vincent's hand firmly on Lena's lower back, his presence beside her protective without being possessive. The photographer with the tacky bow tie took one look at Vincent's expression and suddenly became very interested in photographing the flower arrangements instead. Effective as always, Sophia murmured to Lena, while Vincent spoke quietly to Marcus about enhanced security protocols. He's better with you here, you know. Less like a loaded weapon and more like a person who just happens to have weapon-like qualities. That's a very specific observation. I've spent 26 years studying my brother's emotional unavailability. I've become something of an expert. Sophia squeezed her hand. Thank you for not giving up on him when he tried to push you away. He's been doing that his entire life, pushing away anything that might actually make him happy because happiness feels more dangerous than loneliness. He told me about the photographs, about why he thought he had to let me go. Sophia's expression darkened. I wanted to strangle him when he told me what he'd done. Pushing you away because he was scared, that's exactly the kind of self-sabotage our father would have applauded. But he's not his father. He's learning the difference. Because you're teaching him, and because you're brave enough to stay while he learns. Sophia's eyes were bright with emotion. I always wanted Vinny to find someone who could see past his armor to whoever he actually is underneath. I'm glad it's you. Before Lena could respond, Michael appeared at Sophia's side, his expression equal parts nervous and determined. Your brother is glaring at me again. Did I do something wrong, or is that just his face? Sophia laughed. That's just his face when he's evaluating whether you're worthy of me. He'll stop eventually. Probably around our 5th anniversary. That's comforting, Michael said dryly, but he smiled at Vincent with the kind of courage that suggested he understood what he'd married into. Vincent returned the smile with something that almost looked friendly.
Welcome to the family, Michael. Try not to disappoint my sister, or you'll discover exactly how creative I can be when motivated by familial loyalty. Was that a threat or a welcome? Yes, Vincent, Sophia, and Lena said simultaneously, then laughed at Michael's expression. The cake cutting proceeded without incident, though Lena noticed Vincent positioned himself strategically between Sophia and the photographer just in case. When the dancing resumed, Vincent claimed Lena immediately, pulling her onto the floor with possessive certainty. "You're being very obvious about us," she observed as they moved together. "I'm done hiding what you mean to me. Let people notice. Let them talk. Let them understand that you're not just my employee or my convenience. You're my partner, and that means something. It means you're going to be insufferably protective whenever we're in public. I prefer to think of it as appropriately attentive." Vincent spun her with surprising grace. "Besides, you like it when I'm protective. You just don't like it when I'm controlling. There's a difference. I'm learning to recognize it. Slowly, but I'm learning." They danced through 3 more songs before Marcus appeared at Vincent's shoulder with the kind of expression that meant business couldn't be ignored any longer. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation that requires your attention." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "How urgent? Handle it tonight or handle larger problems tomorrow. Your choice." "Give me 10 minutes." Vincent turned to Lena, frustration and apology warring in his expression. "I need to go. Handle it. I'll be here when you're done." She kissed him quickly. "That's what we agreed, remember? You don't hide your work from me, and I don't resent when it requires your attention. This might take more than a few minutes. Then it takes more than a few minutes. I'm a patient woman, Vincent. I've waited this long for you to figure out how to love me properly. I can wait through a business crisis." Something fierce and grateful flashed in his eyes. "I'll be as fast as possible." "Be as thorough as necessary. Fast can wait." He kissed her hard, a promise and a claim, then followed Marcus toward the private rooms where business could be conducted away from celebration. Lena watched him go, feeling the now familiar mixture of concern and acceptance that came with loving someone whose world operated by rules she was still learning. Sophia appeared at her elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Business?" "Always." Lena accepted the champagne gratefully. "Does it get easier, watching him walk away to handle things he can't talk about?" "No, but it gets more familiar, which is almost the same thing." Sophia clinked her glass against Lena's. "The trick is remembering that he always comes back. That's what makes him different from our father. Vinny leaves to protect what he loves, not to escape it." "Your father left?" "Emotionally, constantly. Physically, whenever something more important than family required his attention." Sophia's voice was matter-of-fact, but Lena heard the old hurt underneath. "Vinny saw that and vowed never to abandon people the way our father did. That's why he's so intense about protection, about control, about making sure nothing he loves ever feels unimportant. He pushes people away by holding them too tightly." "Exactly. It's his central contradiction. He loves fiercely, but expresses it through control, which makes people feel suffocated rather than cherished." Sophia smiled sadly. "You're the first person who's figured out how to navigate that, how to accept his protection without surrendering your autonomy." "I just keep reminding him that partnership isn't the same as possession. Keep reminding him. He's going to need it repeated about 1,000 times before it becomes his default setting." They stood together, watching the reception continue around them. Sophia's new husband laughing with friends, guests dancing with the unself-conscious joy of people celebrating something genuine. The life Sophia had built for herself far away from the shadows that had shaped her brother. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said carefully. "Always. Do you worry about him? About what he does? Who he's become?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, considering. "Every day. But I also know that Vinny is who he is because of choices he made to survive our father and protect me. The empire, the reputation, the carefully controlled violence, all of it comes from his desperate need to make sure no one he loves ever feels powerless the way our mother did." She turned to Lena.
He's not a good man by conventional standards, but he's a man who loves fiercely and protects absolutely, and in our family, that's the closest thing to virtue we've ever known. I'm not trying to redeem him or fix him. I know. That's why this might actually work. You see him clearly and love him anyway. Sophia's smile was warm. That's all he needs. Someone who accepts the whole truth of who he is and chooses him despite it. Or maybe because of it. Vincent returned 40 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral, but his shoulders tense in a way that suggested the situation hadn't been simple. He found Lena exactly where he'd left her, talking with Sophia and Michael about honeymoon plans and the logistics of combining two lives. Everything handled? Lena asked, reading the tension in his posture. For now. We should probably leave soon. I have early meetings tomorrow, and you have... He paused, realizing he didn't actually know what her schedule looked like anymore. I have nothing urgent. I quit the cafe job this morning. Vincent's eyebrows rose. You didn't mention that. I was waiting for the right moment. Surprise. I'm unemployed and completely dependent on your guilt money until I figure out what comes next. She grinned at his expression. I'm kidding about the dependent part. I have enough saved to be strategically unemployed for a while. I thought I'd focus on finishing my degree, maybe figure out what I actually want to do with my life beyond serving coffee to people who don't see me. And what do you want to do? I don't know yet, but I'm interested in finding out. Lena slipped her hand into his. Is that going to be a problem? Me being directionless for a while? The only problem I have is that you felt you needed to quit your job without discussing it with me first. Vincent's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the edge of concern underneath. And that response right there is why I didn't tell you. Because this is my decision, Vincent. My job, my career, my life. You don't get a vote unless I ask for one. His jaw tightened, the old instinct toward control clearly warring with his promise to respect her autonomy. You're right, I apologize. Your employment decisions are yours to make. But I would have appreciated being included in the conversation, not because I need to control your choices, but because I care about your future and want to support whatever direction you choose. He pulled her closer, lowering his voice. I'm trying, Lena. But partnership is harder than I expected when my default setting is to manage every variable. I know you're trying, and I know I could have mentioned it earlier. I just needed to make the decision myself before discussing it with you, because I knew you'd have opinions and I needed to be sure of my choice first. She kissed his cheek. We're both learning. That's the point. Sophia watched the exchange with barely concealed amusement. You two are going to be one of those couples who fights about communication styles while actually communicating perfectly, aren't you? Probably, Lena and Vincent said simultaneously. Michael laughed. I like them. They're honest about their dysfunction. All the best couples are, Sophia said, then hugged her brother fiercely. Thank you for being here today, Vinny. It meant everything to me. Vincent's arms came around his sister with careful gentleness. I wouldn't have missed it, even if watching you get married did make me contemplate whether I'm emotionally evolved enough to consider the concept for myself. Sophia pulled back, eyes wide. Are you saying, I'm saying nothing except that Lena has made me reconsider several firmly held positions about commitment and vulnerability. Vincent's expression was carefully neutral, but Lena saw the truth in his eyes. We'll see what happens. After goodbyes and promises to visit once Sophia and Michael returned from their honeymoon, Vincent and Lena finally escaped to his car. The drive back to the city was quiet, both of them processing the day, the conversations, the small revelations that had emerged over cake and champagne. You handled my sister's questions well, Vincent said eventually. She asked normal questions. I gave normal answers. There's nothing normal about our situation. Then we'll make our own version of normal, one that works for us specifically. Lena reached over, lacing her fingers through his. You mentioned reconsidering your positions on commitment. Want to elaborate on that? Vincent was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, his voice low and careful, he spoke. I told myself for years that marriage was a strategic liability, that commitment beyond business partnerships was an invitation to betrayal or vulnerability.
My parents' marriage was a cautionary tale about what happened when two people bound themselves together without understanding or respect. He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. But watching Sophia today, seeing her choose partnership despite knowing the risks, made me wonder if I've been wrong, or at least incomplete in my analysis. Are you asking me to marry you right now? Because that would be terrible timing, and I'd probably say no out of principle. He laughed. I'm not asking, I'm just considering. Aloud. In your presence. Consider away. I'm listening. I don't know if I'm capable of being a good husband. I barely know if I'm capable of being a good partner. But I know I want to try. With you. Eventually. When we're both ready, and I've proven I can sustain this without destroying us in the process. His hand tightened on hers. Is that something you'd want? Hypothetically speaking. Lena felt her heart do complicated things in her chest. Hypothetically speaking, yes, I'd want that. Eventually. When you've stopped treating every expression of love like a strategic risk and started treating it like what it actually is. Which is? A choice we make every day. To trust each other, to be honest, to navigate the complications together instead of running from them. She lifted his hand to her lips, kissing his knuckles. You're getting better at it, by the way, the daily choice part. I have an excellent teacher who refuses to let me retreat into old patterns. Someone has to keep you honest. They arrived at Vincent's building close to midnight, both of them exhausted but unwilling to acknowledge it. In the elevator up to his penthouse, Vincent pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with the possessive certainty that had become familiar. Stay tonight, he said, not quite a request. I was planning on it. All my comfortable sleeping clothes are in your bedroom anyway. That was strategic on my part, making it inconvenient for you to leave. I'm aware. You're very subtle. Lena smiled against his chest. But it worked, so congratulations on your manipulation skills. It's not manipulation if you're aware of it and choosing it anyway. Tell yourself whatever helps you sleep at night. In his penthouse, they moved through the familiar routine of ending a day, Lena changing into the soft clothes she'd gradually migrated to his space, Vincent shedding the armor of his suit for something more comfortable, both of them existing together in a space that had somehow become theirs rather than just his. I should check my messages, Vincent said, eyeing his phone with resignation. You should sleep. The messages will be there in the morning. There might be urgent, Vincent, sleep. The Empire will survive 6 hours without your attention. Lena took his phone, set it on the far nightstand, and pulled him toward the bed. You're exhausted. You've been managing crises all week, and you need rest more than you need to micromanage whatever's happening in your organization. He allowed himself to be pulled, which was progress. You're very bossy for someone who's technically unemployed. I'm very bossy for someone who loves you and recognizes when you're running on fumes. She pushed him to sit on the bed, then crawled in beside him. Lie down. Close your eyes. Try to remember what relaxation feels like. Vincent lay back with a sigh that suggested he was humoring her, but within minutes his breathing deepened, his body relaxing into sleep with the trust of someone who felt safe enough to let his guard down completely. Lena watched him sleep for a while, studying the face that had become so familiar. The sharp lines that softened in rest, the hands that could sign death warrants or hold her with devastating gentleness, the man who'd built an empire on control and was slowly learning that love required its surrender. She loved him, completely, complicatedly, with full awareness of who he was and who he was trying to become. It wasn't the safe choice or the smart choice, but it was the honest one, and that made all the difference. Settling against his side, Lena let herself drift, feeling his arm automatically wrap around her even in sleep, holding her close like she was something precious worth protecting. They'd started with a warning about attachment and ended with a choice about love. The journey between those 2 points had been messy and complicated and absolutely worth every difficult moment. Tomorrow they'd wake up and continue figuring out how to build something real together. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms in the quiet dark, they were exactly where they needed to be. Together. Honest. Home.